Chapter 6, Section 2, Estimating with Percents. The objective of this lesson is learning to estimate with percents. An estimate is a useful answer that is close to the exact answer. Estimates involving percents and fractions can be found by using compatible numbers. These are numbers that go well together because they have common factors. Benchmarks are common numbers that serve as points of reference. Some common benchmarks are listed in the table below. We're first going to look at 100%. 100% is 1. If we know 100%, we can cut that in half, and we know 50%. If 100% is 1, we cut it in half at 0.5. If we know 50%, we can cut that in half and end up with 25%, 0.25. Another useful benchmark is 10%. We start off with 100%. We divide that, which would be 1, by 10, and we would come up with 0.1. We can simply take the decimal of the value of 100%, move it one place value to the left, and we would end up with 10%. When we know 10%, we can take half of that, and we end up with 5%. Two more useful benchmarks are 33 1/3%, which is 1/3 of the total. If I know that, I can double that to 2/3 of the total, which would be 66 2/3%. Example 1. We are asked to estimate 36% of 120. First, I'm going to find 10% of 120. 10% is 1/10 of 120. I can think of this as 1/10 times 120, or 120 over 1. What does that equal? Remember, multiply straight across the numerators together and the denominators together. So my answer would be 120 over 10. Again, we are just, to begin with, trying to find 10% of 120. So 120 over 10. Remember, the fraction bar really means division. So 120 divided by 10 would give us 12. We just calculated what 10% of 120 is. Now 12. What we can do in order to find 10%, we can start off with 120. When we divide by 10, we simply move the decimal one place value to the left. So 120, I move the place value once to the left, and I can find 10%, which is 12. So 10% of 120 equals 12. Remember, I'm trying to get 36%. So I'm going to need another 10%, again, which is equal to 12. Now I have 20%. In order to get 30, I'm going to need one more 10%, which is another 12. At this point, I have a total of 30%. I'm going to add the three 12s together. So 30% of 120 is 36. If I know what 10% is, I can cut that in half, and I'll come up with 5%. If 10% equals 12, half of 10% is 5%, half of 12 is 6. So right now, I know what 30% is. I'm going to add 5%, which is 6. So 30% of 120 is approximately 42. In example 2, we are asked to estimate 24% of 44. Again, I'm going to use the example of 10%. Now remember, 10% we can find by simply moving the decimal one place to the left. So 10% of 44, I'm going to move the decimal one place value to the left, which would come out to be 4.4. I'm going to need another 10%, which is 4.4 again. Now I'm at 20%. We can use half of 10% to calculate 5%. Half of 10% is 5%. Half of 4.4 is 2.2. Now I would simply add 10 and 10 and 5, which would give us 25%. So it would be 4.4 plus 4.4 plus 2.2. So 24% is approximately 11.